Hi, everybody. Dhaman Mehta here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. You know the deal. I've been reading fanfiction a lot, so I decided to go back through my favorites list, sorted by publication date, reread them all, see if my taste still matches up with when I first put these on. So let's dive into these stories. We've reached October 2013. So let's dive in, starting with Fate Revelation Online by daniel-gudman, sorry. And this is a Sword Art Online crossover with Fate Stay Night, where Shirou and Ilya, like after the events of the Grail War, um, Ilya wants to connect with her and connect with Shirou as a gamer, and so they play Fate Stay Night, and then they play Sora Online and get sucked into the death game with Kayaba. But there's a twist because Kayaba is also apparently a Magus, and he turns on the magic system for Sword Art Online to everybody in the game as well. So it's really interesting because the whole system of Fate's magic system is tied into this game and like given to everybody, and it's also done in the way that because the regular people, the non-Magus people, don't know that this is the whole system, so they just treat it as any other magic system in gaming, in that they are so that it encourages much more experimentation and actual usage. So we were seeing the Fate magic system actually blossom with creativity, as opposed to how it normally is in their thing, because it's all about secrecy and only keeping everything to yourself. So it's an interesting environment that's there. What's also there is, obviously, the main character is Shirou. um, Shirou and Ilya, though we get even though they're like the main characters, they're not the POV characters. At least not always. Our POV, this is still written in third person, but it follows different characters every time. So most of the time, it's multiple characters we'll swap to in a single chapter. So that gives us much more of a wider breadth of information of what's going on with the world and reactions, as opposed to just following, just Kirito or Shiro or something. The biggest problem I have with this, in that, is that there's a lot here, like on fanfiction.net. There's 80 chapters, like 400k words, and there's actually a bit more on the Sufficient Velocity forum, where they've posted this story, not the first part, but like a little bit starting from like the 15th arc and onward, and I think there's like two more arcs on that thread. So there's a lot here, but at the same time, it only gets so far. And the reason for that is because it falls into the thing that I've seen a lot of other Sword Art Online fics that I've read do, where they go through every single floor in detail, and that just leads to, I would assume, I haven't really seen it explicitly stated, but like you're mentally, like, if you're gonna go through 100 floors of stuff, that's like all the bosses you got to think of, you got to make up ideas for actually going through the floors and stuff, and it's just so much content that it becomes a behemoth and monumentous task that obviously will discourage writers from continuing. And it seemed like Daniel over here seemed to get that near the end, because like he goes through the first like 7 floors all in the thing, and like for each floor in there, and then he starts slowly skipping. Like, I think the 8th floor is just briefly mentioned before we get to the boss. 9th floor is just there, 10th floor, and then jumps, like, the other 2 arcs go from 10th floor to 20th floor really quick before it stopped. So that started picking up pace, but like that is definitely, I feel, a problem, because I know in the original story there's huge jumps in floors, because, like I said, it gets tedious and boring. Like, you just want to stick to the main relevant pieces. But it's also important here because the slow rollout and like constant expanding of the magic system being given to the players really needs a constant eye on. So it's a mix. It's a mixed bag. But what is here is just super super really interesting and super in depth. I really really did enjoy this, and if you're a Fate fan, I think you will too. It's going to stay on my list. Number two is Hermione Granger, The Witching Hour by Temairine. And this is another Harry Potter video game fic, but this time Hermione is the main protagonist. And that's pretty much the only new thing that's here compared to the other stories with this premise that I've had on my list. It's again, this is a more serious or serious and straightforward take on the idea of like where she's just actually trying to seriously go through it with just the game stuff as like a new change to her life and a complication that she doesn't quite understand, or is that, but and like the others mainly, it doesn't get like anywhere. It gets to the Sorting Hat and then stops, and that's a huge problem because like 70% of this story is like stat planning, and the rest of it is split by setting up long-term quests that don't go anywhere and few conversations. There's just not much reason to really seek this out or read it by itself, and that's that. So it's gonna fall off my list. Okay, next is Muggleborn Teacher by White Angel of Auralon. So this starts when Harry's like a kid in like kindergarten or first year, which is I think when for Britain, where it turns out Harry's primary school teacher was a Muggleborn wizard who basically sees Harry's being abused and like just basically adopts him and secretly raises him. It's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. I don't really see any problems here. There was nothing objectionable, nothing nothing there, but there was nothing showy or memorable either. Like I can't really remember much. Like in right now, I can't really remember much about this story at all. It does continue and gets to like a couple years of Hogwarts. So if you just want a half finished retelling of canon with Harry having a loving family, you won't be too bored with this, but I just was never engaged, so I'm going to be dropping this story from my list. Now we have another Harry Potter story, this one called Harry Potter and the Trouble with Sorting Hats by Durandal. And this is a super short one-shot joke fic that's just meant to be a slightly funny take on the common time travel, trope and cliche. Gets in and out with a quick joke giggles that I feel like is it wouldn't get stale quickly with multiple readings. I wouldn't mind reading it again, so it's gonna stay on my list. All right, fifth is Usurper of Victory by the Hero of the End. This is a Familiar of Zero crossover with Campion, where Louise summons Kusanagi Godo a few years after he became a Campion, so he's like really gotten into his powers and role as a Devil King. This story is just one chapter. It's not meant to be a one shot, but it's a single chapter. But it wraps, the ending of the chapter wraps up well enough that you can treat it like a one shot. It gets to the Gooch. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Gucci fight. The freaking pompous asshole fight. Right at the beginning, and it's kind of dull. Like there's a couple funny lines here, but it's basically 90% of it is just Louise, being her normal bitchy self and bitchy entitled self at the beginning, and Godo being extremely patient and just dealing with it. And then at the end, he fights the brat, and he fights the Earth brat, and shows off his power, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, it's scary," and that's about it. It ends right after the reveal. So aside from like that one SmackDown, there's no catharsis of, yes, let's show these uppity, stupid, entitled brats their place and like, show that they're not the greatest thing that ever was and earn some fucking respect. But none of that's there. It just is. Like, it's fine, but I see no reason to ever come back to this again. Um, it's perfectly, like I said, it's okay. If you want to give it a look, I would say feel free, but I don't think you would ever. No, I don't think I don't want to see it again. I don't think anybody else would either. It's gonna fall off my list. Back to the Harry Potter well now with Harry Potter the Geek by Andreas. And this is a story that takes place starting with Harry's fifth year, where the summer before that, the Dursleys go on vacation. Harry's not going with them, so he stays at home and decides to take a trip onto Dudley's computer. And basically now he goes, after that, goes back to Hogwarts armed with the most dangerous weapon of the internet, memes. Yes, this Harry is a walking meme factory where, like, freaking, all of those, all those people, if your friend's like the one that only talks in references and internet, like, memes and stuff, that's what Harry becomes. And that is the main point of humor of this fic. So if it's like it or leave it. I found it to be very entertaining. I like this. I mean, if you've watched these videos at all, I am a fan of very stupid humor. But I can easily see it being very obnoxious to people, or offensive. I mean, there's one whole chapter which is just making fun of the, super Tumblr SJWs that are just like, everybody's like, oh, I have like 27 pronouns, and if you use the wrong one on the wrong day, I'm gonna be super angry, and I do this kind of, like, it makes, if the fact that those people are there and also being like fun, it's like, it's a mixed thing. Like, I could see it being offensive to people. I just took it as a joke as it is, like, because it's obviously so over the top and ridiculous that it shouldn't be taken seriously. At the same time, like, while it is crack, it is wrapped around a coherent narrative. Every step there's like, while it's just bathed in ridiculousness, you can see the plot progressing and you can see how one thing connects to the other. It's not just random things for the sake, like, just randomly happening and random and just staying that way. There is a actual, actual path forward. And I find, and I especially like how it wraps up in the ending. I found that to be really entertaining. Luna is also like a really fun character. This who meshes well with Harry's now new insanity. I like it. I like this a lot. If you can stomach if you can stomach a story drowning in meme culture from 2013 and like before, like, you'll find a good time here. I certainly did. It's gonna stay on my list. And the last one for this video is A Phantom Marooned by Lord Pugsley. And this story involves Danny Phantom, where Danny and his class win a free cruise trip, which the ship blows up, leaving them on a deserted island that just so happens to have a ghost shield around it for some reason. Intrigue, mystery. So this story is very similar to Stranded with My Class, which is another fic that was on my list, which I had kept on my list. But it has like two major differences. One, it's complete. Stranded with My Class was not. And two, it is much more Danny-centric. Like, in Stranded with My Class, like, the main conceit was, like, both these have the main conceit of, like, we didn't really, like, the class learns a lot more and, like, learns how much of a badass Danny is and stuff like that, and Danny and his friends are, Tucker and Sam. But like, Stranded in My Class really gave more moments for the others to shine. Here there's like one or two things which is like, oh, Tucker, like, well, Tucker stands up to Dash like once, and like Sam, like, oh, she's so good at the medic stuff, why, like, what, this is weird, but like, that's about it. This one is much more focused on just Danny being basically a super god, and it's like, it's actually kind of ridiculous how nobody else figures out he's a superhero, considering all the shit that actually happens to him during this story. Um, I think it's pretty interesting. I do feel like the ending is kind of rushed and has a bunch of moments that are just there for basically like plot contrivances. Like literally, the final confrontation with the antagonist is like, considering the other people that are there, that should not have that should not have happened. It only happened because the story, you wanted to wrap it up this way, and like that. It's like that. There's no way that should have happened that way. And there's also the whole thing of like, oh, why like Clockwork sent me here? Like, why? It's like, oh, there's a ghost ally that you need to be saved, and like that character, that whole like plot line and stuff takes like one scene, could have been cut without any consequence to this story, would not have changed anything. Um, but I still think like overall it's interesting, and I think it's a good story. I could easily have seen this like if this was like actually animated as part of the show. This could have been a great like 3 or 4 episode season finale. Like I think it would have been really good. And I enjoyed it a lot, so it's going to stay on my list. So there we have it. Another 7 stories down. Fan fiction status time. I've now read 972 stories on my from my favorites list, and 459 of them have stayed on. So there we go. It's still coming. I still got a lot of stories to go, so it's gonna go a while. I can easily still. I know with how I've been reading, it's gonna still take me at least a year to go through this list. But hey, as always, I leave links to all the stories in the description. So if you want to give them a look for yourself, feel free. Um, as well as a couple other links to a couple other places like my profile or my playlist for these videos or forum where I post this. Those are all there. But yeah, feel free to check them out, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.